Is the president serious about the allegation? I would say, based on the fact that the president has significant privilege and responsibility and sources of information, when he speaks and says we are about to arrest them, we are happy. We are happy that he's saying that. But surely, how did we get here? How many times have we had allegation of laws that have been enacted after people have gone to State House? We have had several people in the public domain, including the former deputy, the impeached deputy president, citing incidences where the voting or the enactment of legislation in the National Assembly in particular has been influenced by the presidency. Nyani haoni kundule. So for now, we look forward to the prosecution of members of parliament. As they are being prosecuted, can they say who paid them? So that then even all those people within the executive who have been receiving, who have been legislating, you know, even the finance bill, conflict of interest. What business did members of parliament have taking it to State House? Yet they are the ones who are in charge of deciding whether we pay a certain tax or not. So I doubt who, it feels like PR, but if that PR can birth the needed action within our systems, we will celebrate it as we demand further and deeper actions.
To the sentiments given by my colleagues, one on the issue of the allegations of extortion by MPs. If the president is serious, he will present the evidence that he has, because he seems to have evidence that he says can, as a next step for him would be that those MPs that are culpable will be arrested. So if he has evidence, we hope that he has already provided it to the investigating authorities. If he hasn't, we expect that he will provide that evidence so that thorough investigations can be made. And then anyone who's found culpable, both the bribe giver and the bribe taker, should then be processed in a court of law. That is what we expect. And we challenge him to take further action rather than making the public statements. As I said, the public statements will remain mere allegations aimed at playing to the public gallery as we see it.
The question about whether the president is serious, of course he's not, because if you look at the 7 scandals we have raised, actually 6 falls within the office of the National Executive. Out of the 7, the one by parliament is the one which falls within the presidency. So you can see, outside the presidency. So which means actually the national government is part and parcel of this conundrum of corruption in the country. And therefore, what we want to do, because also this issue of extortion by members of parliament and other legislators, even at the county level, is a national phenomenon. We are also exploring further research and investigation into this. Of course, as we have said in our statement, it is a public position, but we want to establish more data about it. Because apart from what we are calling conflict of interest, and also gaining advantages of others, it compromises actually oversight institutions, because it is the National Assembly, the Senate, and the county assemblies which are responsible for oversighting the national executives and also county executive, the presidency, and also the governorship. So it's a bigger crisis of public finance accountability, which we have to get into.
Thank you very much. Good morning. This is a statement by the National Integrity Alliance on the conflict of interest. And we are saying that the conflict of interest in public service must end. So the National Integrity Alliance is a coalition of anti-corruption civil society organizations, and it calls for immediate and visible enforcement of the Conflict of Interest Act 2025, whose implementation commences today, the 19th of August 2025. This law presents a critical opportunity for us as a country to confront entrenched state capture, insider dealing, and abuse of public office. However, without urgent and decisive action from relevant oversight and enforcement institutions, this law risks being reduced to yet another symbolic gesture which is not effective in controlling the conflict of interest. Now, Kenya's struggle with conflict of interest is not new. It's traced back to the 1971 Degwa Commission report, which controversially recommended that public service servants be allowed to engage in private businesses while holding public office. Now, this legitimized dual loyalties and opened the floodgates for the entrenchment of state capture, patronage networks, and the abuse of office. This position was further reinforced by the Sessional Paper number 5 of 1974, which operationalized the Commission's recommendations, effectively institutionalizing conflict of interest in the governance framework of the country. From that point onwards, the boundaries between public service and private enrichment became increasingly blurred, laying the foundation for decades of impunity, insider dealing, and the erosion of public trust. Today, the Conflict of Interest Act 2025 presents an opportunity to reverse this legacy, but only if it is enforced rigorously and universally. The provisions of the Conflict of Interest Act 2025 provide clear standards requiring declaration of private interest, prohibiting preferential treatment, and banning public officials from benefiting directly or indirectly from government contracts. These provisions must be implemented robustly across all levels of government. Enforcement must start now with the law coming into effect.
My name is Davis Malombe. I'll pick it from there. Its enforcement is made more urgent by the recent scandals and official audit findings that have been uncovered when widespread conflict of interest violations. And here we are focusing on select 7 scandals which have been published by the Office of the Auditor General, and also some of them publicized by the media houses. So we are talking about amounts coming to 158 billion in total out of the 7 scandals we are referring to. So the first one is the Kenya shillings 45 billion NTSA deal. The Dead Nations newspaper reviewed a Kenya shillings 45 billion public-private partnership between NTSA and a private firm allegedly linked to State House, which is riddled with conflict of interest, lack of transparency, and undue political influence. This points to potential violations of the Conflict of Interest Act on failure to declare private interest, granting unlawful preferential treatment, and prohibiting public officers from benefiting from or having interest in contract with their own entities. If public officials or their associates were involved in awarding or benefiting from these contracts, this constitutes a direct breach of the Act. Number 2, report of the Auditor General on national government ministries, departments, and agencies for the year 2023-2024. The recent Auditor General's reports exposed irregular procurement practices involved in SHA smart systems, including lack of transparency and accountability in the procurement of the healthcare system that cost taxpayers Kenya shillings 104 billion, alongside the troubling fact that the state does not own the health system's intellectual property. These actions likely contravene the provisions of the Act, especially if public officials or their associates are linked to the consortium controlling the system or benefiting from the deal. Number 3, the Auditor General's report on the e-citizen platform. In March 2025, the Auditor General released a report revealing the loss of 90 billion on e-citizen platform, revealing troubling gaps in governance, transparency, and financial accountability. The lack of a centralized accountability mechanism has allowed billions to move through shadowing channels. If public officials were involved in selecting or benefiting from financial service providers without disclosure, this would breach the provisions of the Act. These risks demand immediate investigations and accountability. Number 4, the construction of the church in State House. Most troubling is the proposal to construct a multi-billion shillings church at State House, presented as a private initiative by the president, but using public land and raising fundamental questions about the misuse of the office and the public assets for personal religious interests, which have nothing to do with the public.
As Kenyans, as taxpayers, as a true lender of this country, because we say all those people who are in power, their positions will go away, but uraia wetu and our citizenship as Kenyans will not go away. First and foremost is that on the things we've highlighted, we have remained steadfast in ensuring that there is separation of power and have opposed CDF so that we respect the Constitution. We received a judgment in the Supreme Court, in the High Court. Right now, it is the National Assembly that is in the Court of Appeal. As that happens, as members of civil society, when Parliament, you need to capture the conflict of interest. That Parliament thinks that they can legislate a conflict of interest into a constitutional amendment. Because based on what is in the Conflict of Interest Act, where your interest, your personal interest as a member of Parliament are in conflict with a structure that you want to create, it is legislating into the Constitution. You want to make conflict of interest constitutional. That is such a huge paradox. Based on that, we are again in the High Court opposing that. But we've also submitted our submissions to Parliament, and we are waiting to see the miracle that will happen in the enactment of this particular amendment. We've done a lot. There are many other cases that our partners here will speak to. But to start off with,